dark and gritty feel of like a fallen kingdom that is a bit of a great conflict. There's no like happy, quaint little villages. Instead, we want to show signs of less like big ass conflict. Over time, as we have increased team, we're gonna add more assets like shipwrecks and torture devices, whatever. So that's gonna be being added over time as well. And who knows, maybe even like hostile NPCs. Who knows? And of course, one of the inspirations we've taken is like a mix between like Dark Souls, Game of Thrones, and a bit of like the epicness of Lord of the Rings. So yeah. Regarding the actual layout of the map, this was also like a bit of an issue on the previous map for those who played those playtests, is that there was like really no defining landmarks. So when we made this map, we made it on a coast instead, which meant that you could have a little bit more way of guiding the players on where to go, because you could have like these big castles far away, and you could have certain things that can guide players to know where to go, because it's going to be a pretty big area to fight over. And we also wanted to add more stuff to actually fight over now. So now we have these big villages, and we have like some prison, castle fortification you will see later in a bit. But here we have an example of the actual village you're fighting over, for example. So it's a pretty neat little not a little area, it's a pretty big area actually. And this structure system is maybe not super clear right now because we haven't fully updated the UI and stuff like that, but the capture points are actually based on a certain tier system. So you have 1 to 4. The most common ones, like 1 and 2, are pretty basic capture points that yield a small amount of resources. But tier 3 and 4 is going to be much more rewarding. We're going to, in the future when we expand on these game modes, we're going to make it a little more clear for the players that you actually want to be advancing further into the map and capturing these zones. So yeah. Yes, and besides that, I would say we really want to try to increase the epicness of this stuff. Like we really like the final capture point we haven't really fully made yet, but you can see it a little bit in the distance as a silhouette. It's gonna be like this main castle to fight over, which is gonna really want to have this super big scale combat. Like preferably we're also going to be having some siege mechanics at some point.
And you mentioned the size of the map for this playtest. I think was, what was it, 1 by 2?
Yeah, 1 by 2 kilometers. So yeah, it's still pretty big compared to typical multiplayer maps. So yeah,
but still not the full size of the Grimshores map. It's kind of a sample of the Grimshores map.
Yes, exactly. It's 1/3 of the full map. Yeah. Yeah, if you could see in the first image, you can see that this is only one part of it. Yeah, and I would also want to mention a little bit about this game, this kind of playtest, is that this playtest is not really meant to reflect the full finished state of the game, right? We have some specific stuff we're basically doing to be able to test the scales, like we have a grid-based spawn system. You can spawn out a lot of NPCs and spawn out the players on lots of locations. So we just want to make that clear. Later on, we're going to have a different, little bit more advanced system in how you're actually advancing and capturing these zones. And yeah, I guess that's the basics of Grimshores, but I can definitely add more later.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Joel. And yeah, feel free to jump in throughout. I'm sure you'll have plenty more to say as the stream follows through and as we get people, sort of more and more people joining in. But yeah, thank you for the introduction. If we want to quickly go back to the earlier slide, Piotr, I can walk us through today's agenda and let you know what we'll be doing here on today's test. So basically, we've started with a brief map tour. Thank you, Joel. The next part of the test will be gameplay basics. So there's not a built-in tutorial yet. There is a basic, you can hit F1 to unlock the tutorial screen. But basically, the best way to learn to play is to just sort of try it out. So the gameplay basics, we will let you have free play for I think about another 10 minutes or so. Hopefully all of you are logged in and playing. If you are not able to, please post in the chat if you're having issues. If you're having persistent issues, you can also post it here. So after that sort of free play with no scoring, we'll take a short break, and then we will have a first match that's sort of our first official match of the day that will have scoring. It's PvP. There will be some limited bots spawned as well, but really it'll be sort of a large-scale PvP battle with scoring. We'll explain exactly how the scoring works before that. That'll last 20 minutes, and then we'll take a short break. And then after that, we'll have another full match for 20 minutes, also PvP, but with a lot of bots, so increasing that by several thousand. And yeah, basically, as we mentioned, after the playtest, there'll be a survey that you can click in the game's main menu, so we greatly appreciate your feedback. And as we've announced very recently, some of you might not have heard, streaming is now totally fine and allowed and encouraged. So we look forward to seeing your streams of the game. Feel free to stream this playtest, take screenshots, etc., and tag us if you share them. So yeah, I think we can probably move on to the basics. So there we go. On the screen, we have the basics. I think I'll ask Gabalenzi to explain kind of how things work for those who've never played before, just kind of a quick walkthrough of how to sign in, choose your class, etc., and then of the different controls.
Hey everybody, yes, so thanks for everyone that's attending today, and welcome back to some familiar faces that I recognised from last time. Really appreciate it. So yeah, I'll just run through some gameplay basics. So the first time you start the game, you'll get just a quick tutorial screen, which you're seeing now, which will give you all of the keyboard controls and all the attacks and all that sort of thing. Just one thing we often forget to mention, you can also use controller as well as keyboard. We've tested it quite thoroughly on Xbox controllers, so if you've got a different controller than Xbox, if it's Bluetooth it will probably work, but we can't be completely sure. So yeah, you can see all of the details for the controls up there. Best thing to kind of mention really is that we've now got light and strong attacks for all the characters in the game. So I think in the previous playtest we only had it for Knight, but there's now strong and heavy attacks for all the different characters. There's been a little bit of tuning on like the different strengths of the characters as well. Not a huge amount, and there's a hell of a lot more to do, so it's all still quite placeholder really when it comes to the animations and some of the combat. But you should notice a difference from last time. So when you actually start the game itself, you will now be automatically assigned a team. For those that have played in the past, we actually haven't got around to implementing team, auto team balancing. So we had loads of people joining multiple different teams and different team amounts and stuff like that. So we should have more balanced teams this time. Again, this is a brand new feature, so maybe it'll go wrong. Well, we've got lots of players in here as well, so we'll be keeping an eye on whether that feature is actually working correctly. So you get assigned a team. It comes up in the front end to tell you which team you're on, and then you can pick a class. And as I mentioned, each offers a trade-off in strength and speed and defense. If you just look in the front end description, it'll tell you what the different character classes do. So you select one of those and then you choose a spawn point. So when you go into the map itself, you can see it's a much more expanded map than last time. Can't remember if the zoom functionality was in last time. I think it's new as well, but it allows you to look at all the different capture points that are currently in play. You can see on the actual shields themselves, you can see which ones are owned by your faction. You can spawn at any which is owned by your faction, and the larger ones are like the sort of permanent spawn points which you'll always be able to spawn at. So yeah, when you're in the game itself, you can press the escape key to access the main menu, and you can adjust your settings, check the controls, you can see the tutorial thing. Again, you can also see the Dominion board, which shows the current scores and that sort of thing. Also, if you're experiencing any lag, if you go into the settings, you can change the graphic settings to improve the frame rate. And the one you really want to be looking at is the I can't remember what it's called now. It's the player, the distance, draw distance for the players, basically. So yeah, if you are experiencing significant frame rate issue, then yeah, that render distance is the one to have a go at. So yeah, I think that covers it all. Is there anything else you want to add, Gradius?
No, we'll repeat throughout, some tips, maybe gameplay tips about combat. We mentioned potions, right? Where those come from?
Oh yeah, I forgot the potions. Yeah, so we start a game with a single potion that restores your health. Every time you kill an enemy, you get rewarded with an additional one. We fixed the bug, which meant that you could just keep getting potions for more and more kills, so you could end up with hundreds of potions. So the maximum you can carry now, I think, is 5. So yeah, we fixed that to make it a bit fairer. When you came across someone with 20 potions, it wasn't a fair fight, to be totally honest. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah, so we can move on to the next bit.
Great. So yeah, I think the next thing we can cover is basically exactly sort of what the kind of match structure is. So we've got a little more time left in this free play here. People can continue to practice. But while we do that, what is sort of the match structure? How does scoring work? And what is sort of the broad goal of combat?
I can take that. If I think Jason's struggling a bit with his mic. So yeah, the matches we're going to play today are 18 minutes long. Various control points on the map, and the game mode is very similar to what we've done previously. The goal is to gain points by holding these control points and taking out enemies. So you're scoring for your whole Dominion. It's a cooperative team game where there's 3 teams. 2 of them are obviously your enemy. And how the scoring works, the control points are generating score while they're under your control. As mentioned previously, there are now different tier ones, so you can distinguish them on the map with the icon. The larger control points generate more score. You can make sure that once you capture them, that they are defended, because the longer you hold them, the more they generate high score. Additionally, you gain points for killing enemies. And as mentioned as well, each kill gives you a health potion. So yeah, that pretty much covers it. After the timer runs out, the team with the highest score is the winner. Yeah, and I guess we're getting pretty close to starting the game.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about so we've talked about the level design of this level, right? Sort of what went into building it, and the sort of aesthetics and the feel of it, the general level design structure. How does that affect combat compared to the last map people played, right? Because the last map, as you discussed, is kind of more open, and it was sort of more samey, right? Like a lot of the regions were quite the same. This one has a much more varied terrain, as people.
Yeah, the first map was really a test map, to be honest. So it was just rolling hills. There was virtually nothing in the way of like urban environments and buildings and stuff like that. So the new map has got more kind of extensive fortifications. There's an actual urban sort of town area. There's a prison. There's all sorts of environments that we've not really tried at scale before. And yeah, I mean, obviously this is still very early stages, but as the game develops and we can move back to gameplay once we've got more of the networking worked out, we're going to start setting up fortifications within all of these castles, and just really improve the overall kind of core gameplay experience, so that each of these areas will be battled over by multiple players and multiple teams at the same time. But if you want to add anything else,
yeah, I can also add that we also we're expanding our biome system, where we generate the vegetation as well, so we get some more variation thanks to that. Basically have more functions now, so we can have certain functions where we actually spawn on certain wheat fields, and later on we're going to be expanding it even further, so we
and
get
then
more variation.
Nice. And then also outside the castles, right, there will be certain choke points, such as bridges, probably, stuff defined by the shoreline, stuff defined by ruins, relics, etc., that basically will be part of territory control as well, right? So there's not, of course, taking the castle is kind of the ultimate goal, but in getting there and defending, there's also these choke points, so those will provide some kind of interesting offense and defense possibilities in large maps.
Yeah, we've tried to build a map so we can guide the players where to go, and there's always more high value points further to not necessarily the center, but you're not really more encouraged to further into the map and fight for achievements. Of course, this system will get a lot on over time as well. It's going to be really interesting to start adding more mechanics into actually fighting for these zones.
So I think we're getting close.
Else,
End of this free play. This is your last chance to get a few more kills in. A lot of you seeing some kills racked up. Players, lots in there as well.
When there is a core setting, right, in the options, right, sometimes it's unchecked and other unchecked by default. But yeah, you can definitely turn on core if you want to do that.
So I think that's a per person setting. Yeah, I think we have it
Yeah.
in our stream. I don't know.
It's a little bit extreme now. Like every kill is like it's measurements. Later we're gonna adjust
Yeah,
it. But
it's
fun.
worth mentioning. You know, this game will be gory and bloody. It's just the gore that's implemented at the moment. It's more funny than gruesome, which isn't really our intent. But maybe we'll keep it like that because it is pretty funny.
Yeah, basically any kill does it. So if you would have ranged weapon now, someone shooting with a bow, you would still have like this random dismemberment. So,
It reminds me of that bloody mess perk in Fallout. If you remember.
Yeah.
A little bit comedic this level here.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes left here. Very close. If you have a nemesis or someone who's been bothering you this whole time, this is your last chance to take it out on them.
Gradius, should we mention the bug reporting form?
Yeah, so we will also this time, so we have our survey we've mentioned, we will also have a bug report form that we'll be sharing in the chat. We of course hope you'll fill out the full survey and give us your feedback, but if you encounter a specific bug, feel free to do that any number of times. It's not a single use form. And it's really just a simple form that gives us info about what happened. It lets you upload a screenshot if you want, but it's not necessary. So we'll be posting that as well every few minutes in the chat. Bug reports, in lieu of what we will have eventually, which is an in-game bug reporting system where you can simply click and report. These help us quite a bit with development, especially in these larger scale tests where certain things might reveal themselves that wouldn't be seen otherwise.
Yeah, as people have been saying in the chat, this map is huge, and one of the challenges when you're a fairly small development team and you're doing scale testing is just, covering the amount of ground that you need to do all of the testing. So yeah, we know there'll be numerous graphical issues, things floating in the sky and holes that you can fall down and stuff like that. So if you do come across anything at all, and you can get onto this bug report, then yeah, please let us know. It looks like there may be some issues. I'm just looking in the chat here. Are some people not able to get onto the bug report form? Cool.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah, we'll work on that and we'll post the link and make sure. I think we've probably set it up so it's only Metagravity employees. Yeah, so we'll get that fixed and then we'll send it out again.
But yeah, mounted combat is definitely a really cool thing that would be nice to explore at some point.
Yeah, it's funny really because most video games I've developed over the years, we would focus on the features, the gameplay, and then we would spend the next 2.5 years trying to make it work. And we're doing the exact opposite here. We're focusing on the technology, the performance, the networking, and building large-scale worlds, getting the open world stuff right, getting the streaming right, getting a really rock-solid foundation, and then adding mounts, then adding archers, then adding siege engines, then adding, player-to-player trading, armor, inventories, all that sort of stuff, which will be, I know it kind of sounds odd for people maybe not in game dev, but they're all like solved problems. I've seen them in many, many video games over the last 20 years, so I'm less worried about things like that, even though they might be a little bit more exciting and interesting. What I'm most worried about is how the hell do we make a game work with 15,000 people at the same time? There will be types of armor. There will be an entire inventory system where you can equip different types of armor, which give you different abilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, and some type of progression system as well.
Again, we're all a little bit nervous about showing something so early, but because it is a scale game, which is going to need so much testing and refinement when it comes to scale networking, we need to show the game, just months into development instead of years into development. Like games I've worked on in the past, you wouldn't show the game for 3 or 4 years. We're showing it in the first few months. So it's a completely different way of working, but it's cool. It's great to get feedback so early in development instead of having to wait years and years. All right, so it looks like the proper game is now in session.
Yeah, may the best realm win. So you've probably been assigned, a Dominion at this point we're calling them. So let's talk a little more about scoring, right? So how does scoring work? What are the objectives, and what do you get large and small amounts of points for in this game?
Let me know if you hear me.
Yes.
We can hear you now. Hello.
Yeah, that's great. So hello everybody. So I can tell you a bit more about the actual scoring in game and the control points. So in the game we actually gain score mostly for controlling the control points. So each Dominion is gaining more score and more points, and the longer they keep and hold control over the control points. And we have actually 4 different tiers of control points in the game, and the better the tier of the control points, more the points it generates. So it's much more important to actually try to defend and conquer and capture those points that are generating you the biggest chunks of the score. And also a part of the control points, the score is generated by kills too. So whenever you kill anybody from a different Dominion, you also gain a little bit of the score. Obviously, much more is generated from the control points, but killing is also a viable strategy to get your Dominion to be victorious. And of course, at the end of the whole match, whoever has the most, the biggest score, is the winner.
Another thing to point out is that for the folks who came last time or have been here for all of the tests we've done, the player count is exponentially increasing. I think the first thing we did at GDC, if I remember rightly, was around 1,500 from memory, and we're now comfortably pushing above 5,000. And
it was actually, I mean, yeah, we had 1,500 for GDC, but at the same time, when we did on cinematic, it was even less. Like we did like a few 200 on cinematic, I think. So. Yeah. So this is what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to the point where the networking technology can just keep scaling forever, basically. So with bigger maps and bigger player numbers, doesn't really matter, because what matters is we get the networking right for what's around you, and then we stream in the locations of the players as you move around the game world. So the whole point of these scale tests is to eventually get to a point where we can have effectively infinite size games with infinite size numbers of players, where the world can just go on and on and on. And we're really starting to get to that point where we think that the networking is getting to the point where really numbers don't matter anymore. It just comes down to kind of how much bandwidth there is in the internet and how fast servers are and stuff like that.
Yeah, and as mentioned, we've got these relay servers happening this time, so some of you in regions close to where those are might see some improved ping versus last time, if you joined us last time. Generally, we're looking to always optimize, add more of those, but people outside those regions might experience some higher ping, some worse lag. And of course, in the third match, where we really push by adding some more bots in, thousands more bots, that might increase a little more, but we will wait and see. That will be interesting. So
yeah, the relay server thing's really interesting because, like Gradius was saying last time, we just had a single server and we had people connecting, all the way from Australia to Europe and still having an okay-ish experience. What we're trying out now is these 3 different relay servers in different regions of the world. So there's an American one, there's a European one, and an Asian one. And if you're in that region, you connect directly to that server, and then your network packets, to get technical, get relayed over the really fast internet backbone. Our hunch is this will be better. Remains to be seen. Theoretically, it should be much better, but in practice, will it make a huge difference? We don't know, and this is why we're doing these tests now to work out the architecture that would make sense for a full-scale game.
Yeah, it seems better at least.
Yeah, I think so.
Help us a lot, right?
Yeah, like in the last test, I think we had like 4,000 players and stuff, and you started to see some sort of lag and sort of odd behavior, whereas now it seems to be a lot better. So we'll actually be doing like diagnostic tests to work all this stuff out from these tests and see what the lag numbers actually are.
Yeah, I just want to shout out that Piotr here on the stream is near Ironfell camp, so if any player is close, try to kill him. He's quite good.
Stream sniping ourselves, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, don't get near Piotr.
Watch yourself on the stream.
Yeah.
He's not
He
only
does need to be taken down to size. He really does.
Yeah.
not only a good streamer, he's also a pretty excellent player.
Yeah. There was a body piece there that flied up into the air a few meters, but
Yeah, and also we have some raffle prizes this time as well. You can you enter simply by playing. So by playing and filling out the playtest survey afterwards. There'll be T-shirts given out, and then also people who win will be able to name some of these control points for the next playtest. Of course, along with some various rules, but you'll be able to name, I think, up to 10 of these control points for the October tests within reason, whatever you want. So make sure you fill out your surveys after you've played to get a chance to win those. So here's one of these bridges that we were talking about earlier, which you can imagine as sort of a choke point if there's large armies coming through, a defense point, etc. Because as we've seen mentioned in the chat, there's currently no swimming in the game. So essentially, it's kind of a link between 2 land masses here. And we had talked about potentially in the future having sort of at least a wading mechanic, right? It will not necessarily be much of a swimming game ever, but we'll have to see. That could come with later development.
Well, there's
now, essentially, water is a hard barrier, right? So it's pretty much a wall.
I just want to mention that there's some AAA Ubisoft game that doesn't have swimming in them. So for us in our alpha stage, it's a good excuse.
Yeah, we wouldn't want it in the game now to like an issue. But yeah, it's basically you can treat it as kind of like a hard wall right now. We'll see. There is, however, and I'm sure some people have encountered this involuntarily. Finally, Flicker was taken down. There is fall damage now, right, in the game?
Yes, that's true. Right now, no longer you can fall down from a huge hill or a tower and not die and be fully prepared for combat. Right now, you can experience death falling over from high.
Yeah, it was quite funny because the QA team were used to running around with the cheat mode on at super speed and jumping all over the place like they were a superhero, and then we turned full damage on and they started dying all the time, which was quite fun.
Yeah. No, they increased. In the beginning, the fall damage was really off, so even if you just fell like 1 meter, you instantly died.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen that bug in every game I've ever done.
We still will be adjusting the heights from which you actually get the damage, but yeah, it's definitely much better right now.
Yeah, he's carrying the yellow team alone, though. In third still, yeah. So red is
like the crimson is way in the front.
And that's also something we talked about a little bit, how you can make each player feel a little bit more important for such a, when you have a game with basically thousands of players and bots, you still want to have some form of giving the players some kind of tools to make them really useful, even if it's for a short time, some kind of specially strong ability that they later on have, like you could call for some reinforcements or whatever. Like it's a lot of things to explore in that area to make it interesting.
Questions in the chat about mounts, ranged combat, etc. You know, definitely on our list. Not at this stage, but definitely in the long-term plans for the game.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the game is that we want to create like an authentic medieval simulation, not a completely historically accurate game, because players will, you know, have a lot of freedom in our game, so it's not going to be a historical simulation, but it's going to be authentically medieval. So the things that medieval people did and the way they fought and the weapons that they used will be very accurate, and also some of the beliefs that these medieval people had, maybe even sort of delving into the supernatural a little bit, you know, so the sort of supernatural things that medieval people believed you could potentially come across in this game as well. But yeah, definitely mounts, and also very long spears and sticks to stop the
Pole
knights.
arms feels like a
Pole arms, yeah. Pole arms, glaives, morning stars, faces, yeah, all that stuff is fun.
Sieges or sort of PvE,
yeah, I'm really keen
stuff.
on the idea of PvE. One of the great things about the hyperscale engine is not only can it do mass scale players, it can also do mass scale AI. So whether that's like a herd of wildebeest in a sort of open world type experience, or a massive horde of AI enemies, then yeah, absolutely. It's not our focus right now because we're focusing on the player experience and the networking. But we've got an entire work stream of PvE AI based features, so that we can actually start implementing not only enemy AI but also friendly AI. So when you go into a castle, you can potentially spawn like footmen and squires that will follow you around on the battlefield. So I don't know if you played something like Conqueror's Blade, where you've got like a squad of enemy units friendly units that follow you around that you can give commands to. We're definitely looking at stuff like that as well, but it's just way down the backlog at the moment.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting things with like, you know, siege weapons, like even like building ballistas for defense, or, you know, potentially, you know, constructing some basic like thing to defend your little village or something like that. There's a lot of stuff to explore in that area. Yeah, let's see what happens when it actually arrives. It's gonna be super cool. Think about it.
So right now we are getting closer to the end of the first launch. We have 3 minutes left, and it seems like Crimson is very far away from other dominions with 300,000 points.
Damn.
Yeah. Looking at the map, and they have only over a half of all the control points on the map. So yeah.
How many control points are we working with on this map? This current test
This one is
version
around
map?
a little bit more than 50, I think, on this one. But then we only have 2 that is like 3 points that are worth much more, so they're higher.
And also something that's different this time, in addition to fall damage and of course the new map, is that control points have different values, right? Based on kind of how just valuable the region is that they're in, right? So a control point in a castle is worth more than a control point kind of out of the maze.
Yes, that's true. You can recognize the tier of the control point by its icon. So
Yeah,
before the
we want
name.
to really like kind of, yeah, we want to make break up, Jessica, or should I continue?
You can continue.
Yeah, you basically. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Basically, we have some form of indications on the actual map. We can see the tier, but we're definitely gonna want to increase it much more, so you can actually really tap difference between these points. We're probably gonna really emphasize on making these higher tier points more valuable. So, I mean, right now this whole system where we're basically taking up in hundreds of thousands of points is definitely going to be changing in some form or another in the future. So, yeah, expect it to be altered.
About a minute and a half left. So again, if someone's been your bane this whole match, now is your your last chance.
No, but a lot of things can be done with this system, right? We have, now we have a bunch of players, and of course we're keeping it pretty, low fantasy. But there's definitely a lot of things that can be explored, and interesting things that can be added when you have, you can have big armies fighting over certain things. Yeah, so a lot of possibilities that you wouldn't be able to do in many other multiplayer games.
Filter again, single-handedly carrying the yellow team. And yeah, some good shots here during this last few seconds of the castles, the terrain, roads. I don't think there were even really roads in the last map we used, maybe a few. But this is really kind of feels, the intent is that it feels more like sort of an actual region, right? It's a kind of damaged and war-torn region, and there's a lot about it that's sort of broken and ruined and on fire and such, but it's still meant to feel kind of like a more lived-in region.
Yeah. Yeah, there's certain regions that are more kind of war-torn. You can see signs of basically the town burning in certain locations. And of course we're probably gonna, try to make each point a little bit more, get a bit more of a unique feel on each of these capture points as well. So.
Yeah. And that is it for the first match. So congrats to Red, as usual, our dominant team. But good job to everyone. And so let's talk about what to expect with this next match, right? So it's pretty similar timing, pretty similar, straightforward match structure and scoring, but we will be spawning more bots by probably several thousand, correct? So what can we expect in this final match?
So as you mentioned, like the biggest difference right now with the second match that we are having today is the amount of characters that we will have. So the density will be pretty much twice as what we just seen, but the victory conditions and everything else remains the same. So we are playing 18 minutes and on the same map with the same conditions, same spawning points, same control points.
And just as a reminder, we covered it before the last test, but how does scoring work in these matches? So you get points for of course for capturing a capture point, but you also get points that tick up more slowly for holding a capture point. And then as we also mentioned, the capture points are worth different amounts. So a capture point inside a castle, for example, or one that's harder fought for or that's more valuable territory will be worth more to both capture and to hold than a more minor capture point. And then on top of all that, of course, you get points for kills. I guess you could say kind of a small to medium amount of points. But as mentioned previously, the real benefit of kills is that it gets you a new potion. So that's currently is the healing mechanic. So a little like the newer Dooms or whatever, where basically you're rewarded for being more aggressive, for taking more chances, by actually having that be the only way to recover or to be sort of your safer way to play. And we are back, right? So we're back in, and yeah, may the best team win. There we go. Scores are just starting to get on the board. I think people are spawning in still. And here we go. May the best round win.
It's bots and people joining in numbers.
There we go.
Yeah, this new grid spawn system also makes it a lot more chaotic because you can see there's popping in, bots players here and there, so it's really becomes a bit of a crazy free-for-all.
Piotr is thinking he wishes he had a horse right now.
Yeah, these bigger maps, you really,
He's nodding.
So there's not, okay, so there's not a stamina system, right? Because we were realizing that kind of,
Yeah, the only
there is
stamina
for certain
system.
moves.
Yeah, if you're playing as the I'm forgetting his name before, but we changed his name a few times. But the dude with the shield. Yeah, if you hold the shield up, then you'll see an additional bar that appears above your health, and that's a stamina bar related to how long you can hold it up.
Yeah, also for doing these kind of side steps as well, it also goes to
Yep.
its stamina. I mean, this whole stamina system is definitely gonna be adjustments here and there as well. Right now, there's really you can swing forever without
Yeah.
so maybe.
Yeah,
This
well,
is
we're
also
hopeful for
something
the... Oh, go ahead, yes.
Yeah, this is also something that we have changed, because in previous iterations of the game we had the stamina for every character, for every action, even for running or using weapons, and we noticed that this is very bothering for some players, and the gameplay was not as fun as we wanted it to be. So that's why we decided for the changes.
yeah.
Certain
so a
thing
lot
like
of this
basic
is-
running, for example, can be a little bit frustrating if you
Yeah,
basically
when you have to
run
cover
stamina.
distance with no horses.
Yeah, exactly.
If you start running out, then your meta becomes like just this really frustrating sort of go right up to the line and then relax, right to the line and relax. Of course, there's all kinds of games, there's all kinds of maps, there's all kinds of game modes. So we will probably work stamina in some way, but yeah, we're realizing with these sort of large maps and lots of distance to cover, it wasn't particularly fun to have to constantly turn running on and off. For now, we're just letting people be super fit medieval knights.
Although there is one use for it, so right now you cannot dodge all the time, so we are using it for that. So if you, for example, try to dodge using a space when you are fighting somebody, then you will see the stamina bar there, and you just cannot spam dodge. So
Yeah.
this is the
And as you can
prevention.
see now, we have Piotr running around in this. This is basically this big fortification with set up on an island. It's meant to be like a prison fortification. We want it to be like this is of course the work in progress. This is a pretty big section, and you have like one that's kind of begun crumbling, so it's like an older section of the prison. This is of course going to be added even more assets that's going to be kind of related to this setting. So we really want to kind of emphasize getting this kind of stuff like this rented place for people.
Yeah, I don't think medieval builders could build a floor that flat and neat.
Yeah, there's gonna be some changes there.
It's very worn from all the people
Yeah,
running.
it looks like
on
you
it.
could
Constant
play a
running.
game of snooker or pool on that.
You mean like curling as well?
Yeah. Tempting bowling.
Here we
It's
have the
kind of the
execution
central,
area. This is
central scary part of the prison, right?
yeah.
This would be a very good capture point to take. Maybe even some.
Yeah, this is a tier 3 point, so it's called Duskhold Gallows. This is a high value point. And the interesting part, like especially later on as well, like even when you happen to capture, like for example, this big tier 3 point, for example, there's always going to be some smaller tier 1 points nearby, and as a team you're really going to want to be able to capture those around you, because if the enemy starts to manage to get one of those points, they can start respawning in those areas, for example. So I think especially once you start getting organized, human players, I think it's going to be
Yeah, that's the big thing that we want to work on over the coming months and into next year is getting more kind of structured organization features into the game. So we've been talking about social features around organizing people into squads and having, you know, sort of battlefield ranks. So one player on an army can, you know, take ownership as the general, and then we can have multiple layers of command through there, which can, you know, for that clan can get themselves together and organize themselves like that. Similar to what you see in other sort of mass combat games like Planetside back in the day. People played that, or on EVE Online when they have those massive ship battles with hundreds of people. So all that sort of stuff will be open to the realms, which is our clan system basically. So people will be able to create their own realm, which is something we want to hopefully get that up and running pretty quickly actually. And then once you've got your own realm, you can then organize yourself into, you know, a more effective fighting force, because it's a bit of a free-for-all at the moment with this game mode. But we are aware of all of that, and we're going to really start working on that once we've got through this networking tasks to get the game working at scale.
Timber is asking, will there be any plans for an assassin class? And we definitely have ideas for expanding the classes in general a bit. So I think, for example, the skirmisher, I think it's right now it's called skirmisher. But we definitely have some options for him to kind of go maybe towards that direction. I don't know how far, but it's definitely possible to explore stuff like that, having some kind of backstab bonus and stuff.
And certainly there are, you know, medieval kind of examples of this. There were, you know, sort of irregular forces in medieval combat. You had, you know, the kind of more structured kind of units of archers and knights and shield walls and stuff like that, but you also had more sort of irregular units that would do more sort of guerrilla warfare tactics and that sort of thing. So we can definitely have a look
actually,
at that.
I heard that actually, like, most of the battles in medieval time, like there was this big battlefield, of course, but a lot of the action often took place in these like smaller skirmishes and, you know, forces retreating and then going back, and then you always had the use for these kind of faster troops that could go in and attack retreating troops and things like that. So
yeah, and then, you know, ultimately, and, you know, we're looking at a long kind of development process where we're doing regular updates post-launch as well. We want to explore other civilizations. So what we're looking at the moment is obviously, you know, sort of Northern Europe medieval sort of combat with, you know, plate armor and knights and stuff like that. But we're super interested in expanding out to other civilizations, like sort of North African ones, like the Moors and the Berbers and stuff like that, and also further east into the steppes and sort of you know, horse archers and Mongolian you know, steppe warriors and stuff like that. But obviously that's a long way in the future, but we certainly want to then bring all those together and then see what happens when a medieval army comes up against a Mongol army, stuff like that.
yeah, it would be quite interesting, right? You can have these fully armored knights and horses that have their certain perks with basically charging with lances. Then you could also have these more lighter horse cavalry, would of course function quite differently, but they would still have their own like traits in mounted combat, for example. So, and we definitely want there to be a way of people, you know, if they invest into mounted combat, it will be better than other people in mounted combat. You will maybe lack in certain other areas, so there might be some people that want to be a little more towards like a bit of a general and have their own kind of NPCs on their side. So yeah, there's a lot of options we have.
Yeah, ultimately I think we're sort of envisioning, as you said, sort of a three kingdoms kind of model where it's a little bit asynchronous, where there's eventually in sort of the full release of the game, there's going to be almost like three different army types. Of course, people will have a lot of individual freedom to choose builds, choose weapons, etc. But to have a little bit of, this sort of asynchronous, this army will specialize more in maybe mounted combat, horse riders, etc. This army will specialize more in, footman combat, long weapons, etc.
Yeah, so the setting of the game is basically kind of, a European focus, but also including initially North Africa and that sort of like Central Europe sort of area as well. And the idea is that In the final game, people will be able to craft and trade items from different civilizations. So potentially you could equip your character with an Assyrian bow and ride on horseback, but you could also have, you know, like medieval gauntlets or greaves or whatever. So you'd be able to mix and match from different civilizations, and they would all have different strengths and weaknesses. And as the game progresses, we will add more and more options, combat options, as the kind of chronological age of the world advances. So the game will initially start around, you know, 1100 AD, something like that. So sort of around the time of the Crusades and stuff like that. But as the seasons progress in the game, it will get increasingly more technologically advanced. So you'll start seeing, you know, plate armor and war horses and trebuchets and stuff like that. We'll probably stop around, you know, the end of the Middle Ages. So, you know, once you sort of start getting into like full-on cannons and gunpowder and stuff like that, that's probably where we'll end. But who knows? We'll see how it goes. But yeah, the plan is that the tech tree expands in a historical, sort of chronological way.
There's also a very good question in the chat. I think that you know, people were asking where to put feedback. So you can in the top left corner of the main menu you have the hyperscale questionnaire, and at the bottom the last question is actually for you to leave any feedback. So we'll be reading everything that you write to us. So if you have any ideas for the game, suggestions, how you would see the game in the future, let us know. We are really happy to read everything and to know what you think.
Also, there will be catapults. We just don't know exactly how deep we're gonna go into the system. If there's gonna be like a static catapult that you basically just build up at the location, or if it's gonna be something that you can actually move around. Like it's still something that's up for debate.
Which came first, trebuchets or catapults, historically?
Well, catapults and stuff. Was much more, yeah.
So probably it will say trebuchets. Those will be different seasons, or there'll be different eras, as mentioned. So the idea is to sort of let the world grow and progress, and you know, a lot of that progression will be driven by players as well. So it's not as much going to be just sort of handing out these new weapons as it will be that there's the ability maybe or blueprint for these. But yeah, a lot of it will of course be based, like we were talking earlier about the stamina system, a lot of it will be based around balance, around the game modes that people are playing, and around really what's fun. And what, you know, a combination of limitations with freedom. But there will be a lot of freedom in the game. It's not, you know, it's a little bit of a sandbox adjacent game. But at the same time, we'll have some limitations like class, etc., and kingdom. So it will kind of be a balance between that freedom and limitations inherent in a kingdom.
And yes, music and sound is something we've laid a lot of focus. It's usually something that kind of has a lower priority in this kind of early stage of development, but we've definitely felt the need that we want to add more stuff quite soon. Like especially more variation on hit sounds, and especially like as we start adding more type of weapons, but also like lightly armor versus heavily armor, we will have different impact sounds. So yeah, there's stuff that we need to be adding for that. It's gonna do quite a lot, I think, for the immersion. Yeah, start having these sounds.
And for those just watching the stream, that it is on silent. We do this by choice. We might consider adding a little bit of ambient sound for the game next time, but generally it could get a little distracting when we're trying to sort of explain things. But yeah, the game itself does have sound music, etc. But absolutely, this will be a focus on kind of expanding these, on having, you know, combat versus ambient music. Right now they do exist. You can turn them up and down with sliders, and sound effects as well. But it definitely will be something that's hugely expanded over the coming months. Just about 3 minutes left here. Again, red dominant, but it's actually a bit closer than it was last time, if I remember correctly. So, you know, maybe 25%, but not exactly the blowout that it was last time. So that's all due to the fine efforts of our streamer here, who's had probably about 50 kills. But yeah, still, I don't know if it's anyone's game. It's definitely anyone's second place.
can also go into the Dominion board by pressing tab and check all the statistics for the Dominions and for yourself too. So you will have your player count for kills and for deaths.
As you can see, Piotr is spawning now on tier 3 point, trying to defend it from being captured by the Reds.
Camp.
You can see, you can see when there's a player because they're always a little bit more aggressive, a little bit better at
Some are. Some are. We've seen. I've seen some of you that I recognize. Yeah, I've seen a lot of new names too. Very cool.
Died.
Yeah, Red's holding that one.
Seems like they're losing. I think they're seeing now they need it after.
Spawn kind of reasonably close at another point, so we're gonna probably try to rush for this tier 3 point and recapture it. Or at least try.
Neat terrain here. I have on this castle. I haven't seen that yet, but sloped stone. Very cool.
We get some questions about anti-cheat, but it's something we've already explored a little bit, right? Not super.
Yeah, it's been on our mind for a long time. We've got some quite well developed plans on how we're going to go about dealing with anti-cheat and dealing with anti-cheat at scale with our networking technology, which is very different to other networking technology, which might provide us with some protection. But yeah, absolutely. We haven't done a huge amount of that yet in this testing phase, but it's Ryan, who's our lead programmer. He'll be on the call, and he's been banging on about it for months. So I think, as these tests start getting more popular and the game gets a little bit more well known, we're going to have to, really start working on that, moving up the backlog.
But definitely from day one, when this is actually available to everybody.
Oh yeah, when it's released.
This is the top priority.
Of course, yeah, and this is why we're doing these playtests now, because we want to find the exploits before the game goes, fully live. So, we plan to do these regular tests and have available kind of pre-alpha builds all the way through development, so we can find these cheats before the game actually goes fully live.
Yeah, it's about 15 seconds left.
Stuck there.
Yeah, he's got
Surrounded by knives.
Maybe he'll survive.
Even the mighty Piotr has had it.
Nicely done. And I think that's
The sagas will sing about that battle.
Spawn in and lose. But
And
nicely done,
he's
everyone.
still lost. He's still lost the battle.
He won the war. But yeah, it was a lot closer than the time before, so good job, everyone, from Goldenrod and
81
Sapphire.
kills, 9 deaths.
Wow. Pretty good ratio.
He's still getting killed.
So nicely done, everyone. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, everyone, for joining us. So I think what we'll do now is just sort of wrap up quickly. We had considered, I don't know if our server can stay open, but maybe run just kind of a third match for anyone who wants to stick around. We would end the stream a little before that, but we will leave this channel open and leave the server open for those who want to play a bit longer. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed this test of Edge of Chaos. A reminder that we have another one this Saturday at the same time. So I know that time can be a bit confusing for people. We're a global community. We're in summer, special summertime for lots of countries. But basically 19 UTC again on Saturday, this Saturday the 28th, similar test of the same map. Feel free to join.